It's the morning of December 7th, 1941. The Pacific Fleet rests peacefully in Pearl Harbor. Sailors are catching up on sleep, taking photos on the beach, and families are getting ready for a typical Sunday. But across the Pacific, the geopolitical situation is rapidly deteriorating. For years, the Japanese military has been executing a campaign of aggressive expansion throughout Asia to secure new territory and resources. The United States responded to this expansion by squeezing Japan's economy. Washington imposed severe economic sanctions and, crucially, an oil embargo. Without American oil, the Japanese military machine would grind to a halt in a matter of months. Facing economic collapse, Japanese military planners made a drastic choice. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto concluded that if a war with the United States was truly unavoidable, Japan had to strike first. He designed a preemptive assault to paralyze the American Pacific Fleet. Diplomatic talks reached a dead end. With neither side willing to pull back from their ambitions, both nations were now locked into a path toward a violent confrontation. Leading up to that quiet Sunday morning, a massive strike force of 6 Japanese aircraft carriers sailed silently toward Hawaii, maintaining strict radio silence to avoid detection. They positioned themselves hundreds of miles off the coast and launched a massive assault wave. Over 350 planes took to the sky, turning directly toward Pearl Harbor. At 7:02 a.m., American radar operators actually spotted a large cluster of incoming blips on their screens. They called in the warning, but the officer on duty dismissed it. The commander assumed the radar was picking up a scheduled flight of friendly American B-17 bombers arriving from the mainland. No alarms were sounded. Japan's commitment to absolute secrecy over the ocean, matched with this cognitive error on the ground, created a perfect vacuum. America was about to be hit with zero warning. At 7:48 a.m., the first wave arrived. Japanese dive bombers and torpedo planes dropped out of the clouds, targeting the docked ships below. Within seconds, explosions tore through the harbor. Bombs rained down across Battleship Row, detonating against steel and setting the waters on fire. The USS Arizona sustained a direct hit from a massive armor-piercing bomb. The munition punched through the deck and ignited the ship's forward ammunition magazine. The resulting explosion tore the battleship apart. In a single blast, more than 1,100 American sailors were killed instantly. Nearby, the USS Oklahoma was hit by multiple torpedoes. It capsized in a matter of minutes, trapping surviving sailors inside the dark, rapidly flooding hull, who desperately hammered on the steel walls hoping for rescue. The first wave executed Yamamoto's plan with precision. In under an hour, the core combat strength of the American Pacific Fleet was effectively paralyzed. Then, the second wave struck. Their goal was to secure aerial dominance by eliminating any chance of an American counterattack, systematically strafing the surrounding airfields scattered across the island. Runways were left engulfed in flames. Hangars exploded, and dozens of heavy American bombers were destroyed on the tarmac before their pilots could even reach them. Yet, amid the smoke and confusion, American servicemen fought back. Sailors abandoned sinking ships to man anti-aircraft guns, and ground crews fired back with whatever weapons they could find. 2 pilots, Lieutenants George Welch and Kenneth Taylor, managed to locate surviving P-40 fighters. Against overwhelming odds, they got airborne and engaged the Japanese bombers head-on. They managed to shoot down several enemy aircraft. But these individual acts of resistance were mathematically insufficient to blunt the overall success of the assault. After just 2 hours, the attack was over. As the smoke cleared, the physical toll was staggering. Over 2,400 Americans were dead. Nearly 1,200 were wounded. 8 battleships were heavily damaged or ruined. The very next day, the perspective shifted to Washington, D.C. A nation previously divided over global intervention was suddenly confronted with a direct catastrophe. President Franklin D. Roosevelt stood before a joint session of Congress and delivered a speech defining December 7th as a date which will live in infamy. Within hours, Congress passed an official declaration of war against the Empire of Japan. The shock of the attack instantly dissolved American isolationist policies. Public opinion unified under a single cause, ending years of fractured debate. The entire nation mobilized. Commercial factories retooled their assembly lines, pivoting immediately to heavy wartime production to rebuild the fleet and arm the military. Simultaneously, recruiting stations were flooded. Millions of American civilians rushed to enlist in the armed forces, eager to fight back. On a purely military level, Japan's tactical execution was nearly flawless. They had achieved every one of their operational goals and paralyzed the American Pacific Fleet. This chart compares the total industrial output and population size of both nations in 1941. The United States possessed a manufacturing base and a resource pool that Japan simply could not match in a prolonged total war. In their attempt to secure their empire through a preemptive strike, Japanese planners inadvertently awakened the very giant that would ensure their absolute destruction.